Well, those are the headlines that we are tracking for you all evening on ET Now, so stay tuned. Well, first up, let me introduce our guest for today. Like I told you, the topic is going to be all about health insurance because from a financial perspective, I think that is something that you must ensure you have in your pocket. I think it's one of the most important talking points right now from a financial perspective, given what we are seeing. Yet another grim headline of record cases of COVID-19 in the country. So many young people as well being affected by it, hospitalized as well by it. The least you can do is at least ensure that you don't feel too much of a financial blow on account of the disease. I have with me now Naval Goel, founder and CEO of policy.x. Naval, hi, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you, the team at policy.x, and the family are keeping safe amidst this pandemic. These are indeed testing times, and let's hope that we all come out safe on the other side, Naval.
Good evening, Mobina. Yes, absolutely. We are all trying to be safe. In fact, me and my family just recovered from COVID. So, and we've been working from home for the last few months. So I hope that, this extreme situation goes away soon. And I'm sure with vaccination picking up and, a lot of people are already infected. So I'm sure this curve will actually come down a few months down the line.
Well, yes, that's what we are all hopeful for. But Naval, I think, from the health perspective and from the physicality perspective of it, of course, what you and I must do and what everyone must do is stay home, stay safe, limit, going out to only absolutely essential purposes. But from a financial perspective, I think the most important thing one can do is purchase adequate health insurance, life insurance, etc. So, Naval, it's unfortunate that it took a pandemic for people to realize this, but may as well now than never. And I think in the last 1 year itself, we've been speaking to a lot of health insurance companies as well. They've been talking about how there has been a good amount of traction in that space. So Naval, to start with, is that something that you're seeing? Has there been heightened demand for health insurance in the last 1 year?
Yes, absolutely. So when the COVID crisis struck last year in April, May 2020, so that is when we saw a big spike in health insurance demand. Most people, who always used to think that, health insurance is not required for them, they actually scrambled to buy health insurance. And there was a 40-50% jump for the few months. But after that, things started fizzling out and, people started feeling comfortable that COVID is no more there, and therefore, the demand came back to the normal curve. So now we are not seeing in the second wave. Surprisingly, we are not seeing that much of a demand spike. Surprisingly, I think that could be because people are either they have already taken when the first wave came, and secondly, a lot of people have lost jobs, and that is why I think they don't have the spare money to actually buy health insurance now.
Well, that's, that'll really be a very sorry state of affairs if indeed that's true. But yeah, Naval, I think for all those, and like you said, in the second wave, we are not seeing that much of a demand spike. So, nudging our viewers towards why they need a health insurance policy. Naval, why don't you state the importance of having a health insurance policy amidst all of these uncertainties to start with?
Yeah, what we were seeing in India is that, most people, they only see the need of health insurance once they, incur some expenses related to health. So once they meet with an accident or they are struck with a disease, they actually feel the need of health insurance. Before that, they actually feel that, while they are young, they don't need the insurance, and why should they pay premiums of, whatever amount, 10,000-15,000 rupees. But I think one important aspect that most people miss out is the risk aspect. Insurance is to actually protect the risk, and it is not to actually gain from it. So most people, they calculate ki acha 5 saal mein I will end up paying 1 lakh rupees, but in 5 years I might not visit a hospital. In the last 5 years I have not visited, so there is a very rare chance. So that kind of calculation actually doesn't hold when you talk about risk, because what should be in people's mind is that there is a probability. Maybe there is a 1%, 2%, 5% probability of falling sick. And once that happens, they will lose a bulk of their savings. So to avoid that kind of a situation, and also to avoid a situation where you can't even get a health insurance, because once you are suffering from, let's say, a cancer disease or any of the disease, then even no health insurance company would like to cover you. So ideally, the best time to buy health insurance is when you are fit and fine, when you are young, so that at least you have a history of buying health insurance and your claims are honored, and you actually don't face that situation where you lose your lifetime of savings. And it hardly costs anything. It's like 1,000-1,500 rupees a month, and you can get a decent coverage of about 10 lakh rupees. So I think that risk mindset is what is required in Indian people. And we are seeing that, in the last 4 or 5 years, we are seeing huge traction in health insurance. The market has grown 30-40% every year. But I think more is required. Still, the penetration is at a very low level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like Naval said, it's best to start off young when you're healthy, because firstly, your premium amount as well won't be that much. The healthier you are, the lesser the premium that you have to pay. And yeah, you have then that history of insurance as well. So, I mean, it'll be easier for you to get a health insurance policy as well when you're younger and you're fit. Naval, now, who does my health insurance policy cover in the family? If I'm buying a policy for myself, does it mean that my dependents, maybe my parents, children, spouse, would automatically be covered? Just to get that clarified.
No, not really. Actually, there are multiple types of policies. So you can buy a policy which covers only you. You can buy a policy which covers you and your spouse and your children. So ideally, a health insurance policy, a family floater plan is the best, which covers your entire family. So by entire family, what I mean is you, your spouse, and your children. Ideally, you should not cover your parents in the same policy, because obviously their needs are very different and their age levels are also very different. So if you want to cover your parents, you should buy a separate policy for both your parents, and for your immediate family, you can buy a single policy. A lot of people actually buy separate policies for themselves and their spouses, but that does not make sense because they'll end up paying much more by buying separate policies. So family floater is a much more economical option, and it's much more widely prevalent in India.
Okay, understood. Let's talk then. So basically, you can take a simple family floater, and yeah, one tip is essentially to ensure that you don't club your parents into the same policy. Especially your old age parents in the same policy as your younger kids, your spouse, etc. So, Naval, you recommend a family floater, of course, for somebody with a lot of dependents. Now, for those individuals, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of questions with respect to this as well on our email, but what about those individuals who are employed with a company? Most companies do offer an umbrella health insurance policy for all their employees. Do you recommend these individuals take out a separate health insurance policy as well? What do you recommend, or do you think that the insurance provided by the employer would be adequate for themselves, for their dependents as well? Because some companies also offer coverage for the dependents.
Right. So it depends on what kind of coverage you've got from your employer. So let's say if you have an individual cover, so obviously you need to buy a separate policy for your wife and your children. But if you have a coverage for your entire family, so even that might be adequate, or it might not be adequate as well. So sometimes an employer, let's say he provides a coverage of 3 lakh, but in today's time, maybe 3 lakh amount is not enough for the kind of diseases that are spreading. So definitely, ideally, I think 10 lakh is a minimum cover that one should look at from a family floater perspective. So there are multiple options here. One is to buy a separate policy for the family entirely. But obviously that is like a double cost. Your employer is already bearing a cost for 3 lakh sum assured, and you don't want to again bear the same cost. So there is an option called top-up plans. So in top-up plans, what happens is you can actually buy a policy which starts from 3 lakh and ends at 10 lakhs. So it's kind of a deductible of 3 lakh and a coverage of 10 lakhs. So that ways you can enhance your cover. So up to 3 lakh expenses is covered by your employer policy, and above 3 lakh expenses is covered by the top-up policy. So that way you don't land up paying twice, because obviously, that is much more economical. And you also have a separate policy and the biggest challenge that, these people face is that once they leave an employment, and let's say they join another company which does not provide a health insurance plan. So that is when, it becomes difficult for them to actually, continue the plan. But now IRDA has come up with this solution which says that, if you are covered by your employer, you can actually buy a separate policy and kind of have the continuity benefits which are there in the policy. So that ways, I don't recommend buying a separate policy for the same sum assured, but to enhance the cover, you can actually buy a top-up plan.
Okay, so a top-up plan is something that could be pretty useful, if you are covered by your company. And additionally, don't forget that, if in case you do switch employers, or, you do happen to leave your job, then that insurance policy as well is no longer active. So that is something that you'll need to keep in mind. Naval, we speak about health insurance quite a bit, on how to go about selecting it. What do you think of how one should decide on the sum assured? This can be quite a tricky one, and the first thing that comes in our mind that, okay, I'll just take the sum assured, which makes me pay the lowest premium. That's a tendency that a lot of us have in mind. But how do you decide on this figure? Because it can be quite crucial.
Right. So I think the most important factor that one should look at is obviously, the cost of diseases or the cost of treatment which are there. Obviously, if you are residing in a metro city, you need a slightly higher coverage than if you are residing in a rural area, because the cost of medical treatment is much higher in a metro city. Apart from that, obviously, it depends on your pocket. So I would suggest to buy a maximum coverage, because today, medical cost is extremely high for certain diseases like cancer or a lot of such diseases which costs you, upwards of 20-30 lakhs. So if your pocket allows, I would suggest buying a 20 lakh cover. But if obviously, if you cannot afford the premium, or you don't want to buy that much expensive cover, I think 10 lakh is the minimum that you should look at if you are residing in a metro city, and at least 7 lakh cover if you are residing in a rural area. Because obviously this is the basic cover that I recommend to most of our customers. However, if your pocket doesn't allow, I would suggest that, buy a cover at least, whether it is 3 lakh, 5 lakh, whatever, because it is anyways much better than not having a coverage. Also, there is another segment of people, like, for example, somebody is very wealthy and he says that, okay, 3 lakh, 5 lakh ka coverage, so I can easily afford from my own pocket. But I don't want to be in a situation where, I land up paying 50 lakhs for a treatment, or I catch a disease which costs 50 lakhs for a treatment. So in that situation, one way is obviously to buy a 50 lakh coverage, which will be very costly in terms of yearly premium. But the other way is also by buying a 50 lakh coverage with a deductible of 5 lakhs. So that will cost you very less, because there is a deductible of 5 lakh, and the 5 lakh amount you can pay from your pocket, and the remaining 45 lakhs is the coverage that you get from health insurance company. So that is a very economical option to kind of consider, because there is a segment of people who say that, I don't want a small coverage because that is something that I can easily afford from my pocket. I want a large coverage, which is an extreme situation wherein I don't want to lose 50 lakhs or 1 crore rupees. So that is also, a lot of people we are seeing are also buying 1 crore cover right now.
All right, understood. Naval, now thanks to the IRDI as well, lots of insurance companies have been asked, in fact, all insurance companies, pardon me, have been asked to provide Corona Kavach and Corona Rakshak covers. These will cover only COVID. In fact, we've received a question as well from one of our viewers, Vasanta Pingle. She says she took a Corona Kavach policy for 5 lakhs for around 9.5 months from Oriental Insurance. She wants to continue the policy. She paid the premium as well before the policy lapsed in April 2021. But now she said that COVID policies have to be taken fresh each time, and there will be a waiting period of 15 days. So if you could just clarify on that front on COVID Kavach and COVID Rakshak, what's the rules with respect to renewal of policies and the waiting periods as well?
Right. So ideally, in such a situation, obviously, if there is a waiting period of 15 days, she should have renewed it 15 days prior to her previous policy expiry if she wanted continuous coverage. But these are very specific policies and they were launched because of the corona situation. So, the terms and conditions are not what usually are there in health insurance policies. So in usual health insurance policies, you can renew it even on the last day and there is no waiting period if there is a policy which is continuing. But for these policies, there was a specific clause which said that there is a waiting period of 15 days because insurance companies wanted to protect themselves from a situation wherein a person is already COVID positive and is buying a policy and claiming the amount. So that is why there is a waiting period of 15 days, which is the incubation period for the virus as well. So that is why, I think in this situation, I would suggest the viewers to kind of renew their policy at least 15 days prior to their expiry of previous policy. So actually they'll end up paying, 15 days premium extra, but that is fine, to cover for this kind of a situation.
All right. Okay, understood. Now, of course, I think one of the key parts of health insurance is also making claims because that's the purpose, right, that you've taken a health insurance out for. In the event of, hospitalization or any health event occurring, the first thing you should do is inform your health insurance company. You must inform the hospital as well where the individual is admitted. So what's the best way, Naval, to go about to ensure that, you get the claim for, the maximum amount? And can I expect that I'm going to get the entire claimed amount? How does it work?
See, it's actually fairly simple currently. The first thing that a person should do is contact the TPA who is usually available at the hospital and check if the hospital is in the network hospital of the policy that he's holding. So if it is in the network hospital, then he did not do anything. The entire work is done by the TPA. The insurance company authorizes the claim and the claim is settled directly to the hospital. So he doesn't need to pay anything. At the time of checkout, obviously, the coverage amount and the bill amount is obviously verified. And if the bill amount is higher than the coverage, then he needs to pay it from the pocket. So if let's say, so the other question that you asked was, if he gets the entire amount. The amount that usually the policyholder gets is the amount that is the sum assured is the maximum amount that he can get. So if the cost of treatment is less than that, he gets the entire amount. Barring a few other expenses like for food expenses, etc., which is very minimal. So apart from that, he gets the entire amount reimbursed by the insurance company. If the insurance company is not in the network hospital, that is when there is a tedious process. He needs to pay the entire amount from his own pocket and collect all the documents, whether it is discharge slip or the medical bills or the doctor prescription and all that. And he needs to submit to the insurance company later on with the claim form. And the bill amount is reimbursed once the claim is verified. So that is a little bit lengthy process, but that is only when you go to a non-network hospital. So in network hospital, it's very, very easy. You don't even have to shell out anything from your own pocket.
Okay, and in fact, the IRDAI also set out a notification asking network hospitals to honor all cashless claims, because there have been incidents of a lot of hospitals denying the insured these cashless claim requests. Just to wrap up our entire conversation, Naval, today if you have to buy a health insurance policy, what are the features that you would look out for and you recommend our viewers as well should look out for before they choose one?
See, the first thing that I would check is, the hospital that I prefer going, or the hospital which is closer to my house, whether that insurance company has that particular hospital in its network list or not, because I think cashless is a much bigger feature than any other feature in the health insurance policy. Apart from that, obviously I need to check the coverage as per my needs. So if let's say I want to go for coverage of maternity, then probably I need to buy a very specific plan. But ideally, you should not go for some specific policy, because that is not recommended, because those are planned expenses. So ideally, you should go for a plain vanilla health insurance policy which covers you adequately, which has no limits from a bed perspective. You should be able to opt for a single bed, and apart from that, the most important thing is you should obviously compare the premiums, because there are multiple insurance companies offering very similar features. So comparing the premium can help you save couple of ₹1,000 every year. And apart from that, most of the plans are very similar in coverage, and you should go for ideally for a comprehensive cover, not focus on saving 1,000, ₹2,000 by buying a coverage or a plan which does not offer these kind of premium facilities like, single bed or things like that. So I think most important is compare the policies and check for network hospitals.
All right. Naval, we leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining us in what I'm sure a very enlightening, educative and informative session for all of our viewers on health insurance. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, but with that, we're out of time on the Money Show as well. Thanks so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, hope all of you are staying home, limiting your, physical distance, keeping physical distance from, other people, and of course, taking good care of yourselves in these tough times.